Today, there is a lot of discussion on criminal justice reform generally. We wanted to take pause and take an opportunity today to focus in on a population that we have consistently had dialogue around in various kind of pockets, and wanted to have a collective discussion on what's happening with our justice-involved girls and women. Really excited about the set of panels that we have, because it really is, we have a brain trust that's within our system. We also have an opportunity, we want to hear from you, and I expect that there'll be more coming, but this is important, and this group, I think, will really help to lend itself to the fabric of the discussions that we want to have. We want to have rich dialogue, but we also want to walk away with what are some of the commitments that we collectively need to start thinking about making as it pertains to ensuring that the number of young women and girls don't continue to increase in our system. And so with that, without further ado, you have agendas on your chairs, comment cards on your chairs as well. We really want your feedback. The feedback is really to help us. CJCC is going to be in the throes of a strategic planning process next month, and we want this dialogue to inform our strategic planning as well. We also have materials to my right that have been provided by a number of our agency partners, so please make sure that you're able to take advantage of those materials before you leave. There are two things I need to do. First, I wanted to acknowledge we have CJCC principals that are here, Nancy Ware and Cliff Keenan. Acknowledge those two persons who are with us this evening. And I've been going back and forth because I know that Nancy Ware was going to be just tied up in a number of the hearings today, and so I'm really appreciative of her being able to make her way here. Nancy Ware is not only the executive director of CSOSA, she also serves as the co-chair for CJCC. Nancy, can you offer some opening remarks as well?
Well, good evening, everybody. I don't want to hold up the beginning of this program because it is a very important topic, as Director Butler mentioned. We feel that the issues and the agenda for women has been long overdue and neglected over long periods of time in the criminal justice system. And only recently, in the last few years, have we begun to focus on gender-specific programming for women and girls. So this is a timely topic. I'm hoping we'll have a larger audience, but if we don't, an intimate audience is always good, because then we can have some planning and some thoughtful in dialogue and input into some of the things that we think will help to elevate this issue and to make sure that our programming is relevant and gender specific. So I welcome you. I'm really happy that the CJCC has decided to focus on women and girls, and we look forward to the evening. Thank you.
I wanted to welcome you all this evening to this panel. I see that we have a very diverse group of people, and if I could get kind of a show by hands, those of you that work with girls or women in the area of law enforcement, if you can raise your hands. Okay. What about through the court system? Okay, and treatment programs? How about incarcerated? Okay, so we've got a very good group. So I think that we can have a wonderful dialogue tonight about some of those issues. And we talk about understanding the landscape for girls and women in detention and reentry. What we're talking about basically are demographics and talking about gender-informed services. I know that Director Ware was mentioning that a little earlier, that we know that it's different for women and girls than it is for men. There are different pathways into the justice system. There are very, very different ways that we need to look at treating them as well. They have different needs. I'll never say unique needs, they're just different needs. And it makes a difference. Gender does matter. And we wanted to look at some of the trends right now that we are experiencing in this area with our women and our girls, and where we are, and what directions we should take. So today, we have a panel of individuals that are representative of the agencies or treatment areas that we kind of talked about earlier. And I'm gonna let them introduce themselves right down the line. We're gonna start with Ms. Etheridge-Bay.
My name is LaShawna Etheridge-Bay. I'm the Female Reentry Coordinator for the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizen Affairs.
I'm Captain Teresa Whedon with the Metropolitan Police Department, 23-year veteran and with the 6th District.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Rhonda Pope Brown. I'm one of the professional forensic counselors at the Public Defender Service. I work with the juvenile population, both young ladies and young men. And what we do is we work with the attorneys to look at the mitigating factors and the reasons why some of our young people are picking up charges and ways to connect them with services and work with their families so that they don't repeat coming back through the juvenile justice system.
Good afternoon. I'm LaJuan Woodland. I'm from Court Social Services Division. Suffices to say, I'm a 36-year veteran of the criminal justice system and working with children, youth, and adults. And I'm currently a supervisory probation officer in the LOTS unit.
Good evening. I'm Paula Thompson, Executive Director of Voices for a Second Chance. Some of you may have known us by Visitor Services Center. That was our former name. We work with men and women who are incarcerated in both the DC jail, CTF, and we are now seeing people who are coming home, returning citizens from Bureau of Prison Facilities. And we provide inmate services and reentry services.
Good evening. My name is Gareen Dalsey, Deputy Director of Youth and Family Programs at the Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services, where basically the last straw, once you complete, or if you fail to complete probation with Court Social Services, you'll get committed to my agency.
And lastly, my name is Regina Gilmore, as was said earlier. I am the reentry coordinator for DC Department of Corrections. I've also been the women's program manager for that agency. I've been with DOC since 1970, so I've been around a long time, believe in what we do, and wanted to just begin to talk about some of the things. When we talk about the landscape and understanding the landscape for girls and women, we talked about gender-informed or gender-responsive treatment programs. Does anybody know what that means? Can you kind of share what that looks like? Panel members, agents, anybody in the audience as well. We really want to have a dialogue going back and forth.
Thank you again, Regina. First of all, let me thank you, Manon, and help me out if I won't get it wrong, Khalil, for inviting me to be a part of this very important discussion. It's interesting because lately I've been learning a lot about girls in the criminal justice system. Everybody knows I already know a lot about women in the criminal justice system because in addition to being the female reentry coordinator at ORCA, I'm also a returning citizen. And interestingly, I picked that option to best describe myself. Wish I'd kept reading before I picked. Anyway, so I recently was at the conference on women and girls in the criminal justice system in Connecticut, and I was floored, and they had a healing room, which was the best part of the conference because I learned so much that I actually needed to go in there and listen to the bell and breathe. So this stuff can get really heavy, but I appreciate that question because we keep saying gender responsive care and gender responsive criminal justice reform, but I think it's important that we as practitioners and returning citizens really know what that means, even if we have to define it for ourselves. So one of the things that it means for me is just understanding the different needs that women have versus the needs that men have. Because for women, the biggest challenge that I experience, my peers experience, and the women that I work with experience is family reunification. And so for men, that may be a challenge, but it's not as severe as it is for women because women are the primary caregivers of their children prior to incarceration, so on and so forth. We all know all the stats and all the facts about this stuff, but also relationships. And that's the thing that you can't assess or you can't evaluate and say if it's working or not. I don't guess. So people want to overlook it, but it's really important for women who have been through these traumatic experiences in the criminal justice system, prior to being in the criminal justice system and through in their reentry process, to be connected to other strong women who have also had challenges, maybe not within the criminal justice system, and learn to be leaders and advocates for themselves, and learn to make better choices and be better mothers and contribute to the community. So that's what it means to me, and I really appreciate that question being a topic of discussion right now, because I think we have an opportunity, and tell me if I'm wrong, to define it for ourselves in the District of Columbia. And the other thing I gotta say, in case I don't get a chance to talk anymore, the women in DC are unique because not only are we the fastest growing population and blah, 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 all that stuff Manon got out of the way for us, but we're also sent into the federal system, states away from home, disconnected from our families, and then disconnected from our communities. So we come home with even more, not unique, but different needs from the average woman in the criminal justice system as well. And sometimes I gotta say that, especially when I'm throughout the nation, because even though everybody here in the room probably knows that, people outside of DC don't know that. They're not aware that we don't have a state prison and that you're sending DC women to Texas who have children that are here serving that time with them.
That's very much so, that the misdemeanors stay with the DC Department of Corrections, are the district's responsibility when it comes to treatment and reentry, and just a very few of the short-term felons that are designated to serve their sentence here are the ones that we work with. Otherwise, as Ms. Etheridge-Bey was saying, they're all over the country. So that is one of those areas that is uniquely important to us. Okay. And we were talking about gender-informed treatment. What does that look like? What does that mean? What we talk about with women in this area and what we're doing in that area is strength-based, that we're survivors and that we are strong, and we want to improve self-efficacy. We know that 95% of our population that come through the Department of Corrections doors, those women, 95% have been abused in some way. And I was listening to the news today, and they're saying that in this country, every 20 minutes, a woman is subjected to some kind of domestic violence. So it goes all across the board. It's not just those individuals who are coming through our system, but it's you and I and our sisters and our mothers and our nieces. And so it's a very important thing to look at when we're talking about trauma and trauma-informed care. And when we also look at how to teach our women how to cope and how to navigate the system, we want to make sure that we look at that landscape, that we're not increasing the odds for a woman. When she comes home, like Ms. Etheridge-Bey was saying, she has children that she has responsibility for all of a sudden. She's got to find a place to live. She's got to get to the parole officer. She's got to get over for maybe public assistance or some kind of services there. She's got to see a CSO. There are a lot of things to navigate that look very different for women versus when a man comes home, he generally goes to a stable environment. The woman is there, she's been taking care of the children. And so he doesn't have those kinds of pressures. So we want to look at that tonight as well. What are some of the other areas that we know about women and trauma?
I know for us in Court Social Services, we work only with young women between the ages of 12 and 18. And what we consistently see is these girls are getting traumatized even younger and younger and younger and younger and younger. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we do request or recommend evaluation and assessments and try to get a treatment modality in place while they're still home. What's amazing to me is some of them have severely damaged their relationships at home by the time they're like 14. And so by the time they get to the adult system, it's a lot of rebuilding and empowerment that is required. What we do, and like I said, we request and we often get psychoeducational evaluations, psychiatric evaluations, medication assessments. We ourselves in Court Social Services try to run empowerment groups. We do family group conferencing with the family. We understand that the more we can keep that child and her family stabilized and connected, the more successful she will be and remain outside of the criminal justice system. But as a person who has worked with juveniles and also have worked with adults, I can see how when you've been traumatized 3-4 times physically, sexually, emotionally before you're 14, and I don't see you again until you're 34, it can be a lot of empowerment and relationship building.
We'll ask that everyone place the mics a little closer when you talk so that your voice is carrying over into the audience.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll pick up from when you say you see them at 34. We facilitate gender responsive trauma groups on the units in CTF with the women. So we're dealing with that trauma of why they're in the position that they're in, and oftentimes it does lead back to childhood trauma. And oftentimes we found that they didn't recognize it or they didn't know they had been traumatized until we were able to work with them in the group setting. So I think that it is an advantage to be able to work with them while they're still inside so that they can prepare themselves for once they come home.
And can I go back to the adolescent for a second? Because I do think that in some ways we're missing a piece around the trauma piece. Because like Ms. Etheridge-Bay said about the healing rooms, there's some kind of way we're going to have to figure out how to work some healing with the family as we work with the young ladies simultaneously. Because I think sometimes we pull our kids out, give them the treatment around the trauma, and then place them right back into this traumatized family. There hasn't been any healing. So I don't know why sometimes we expect them to react and respond differently simply because they've been away for treatment, because they've been put right back into the same place, in the same position that caused the trauma in the first place. And so until we figure out a way to bring a broader spectrum of healing to the family, we are going to have a tougher time of getting the results out of our young ladies in particular until we work with them and their moms and or their dads around that healing piece and that trauma piece. And I feel like that sometimes once that young ladies get connected to the juvenile justice system, all eyes are on them and the focus gets off of the families. And I sometimes feel like it's kind of, we end up doing kind of work over and over and over again because we're missing the piece, which is the family piece. And I think we need to really look at systemically how we work a little differently and a little broader with our families to work toward getting the trauma addressed from a family perspective as opposed to an individual perspective.
One of the dilemmas that we've seen at DYRS with our young ladies is definitely the trauma. That's clear. But when it's time for a young lady to go home, they've done everything we've required of them, they can't go home because mom is dealing with her own issues. And we have parents come and say to us, you expect me to help her heal, and I'm not even healed, right? So we've taken things to another level where we have groups for the parents, specifically moms, and have a provider come in and help them heal and talk about what's happened with them specifically and start that dialogue and help them to understand that they may be able to get some help. Until we can get them to that place, you can put the MST services and you can do all that and get the kids home, but the parents have to be in a place where they understand that I need some help and I need to be able to help myself before I can help my child. And so DYRS, we've become more than just juvenile justice. So we're reaching out to different providers to say, how can we really help these families better themselves so they can help their kids? Kids are coming in on a daily basis, refusing to go to school, and it's not just you're violating, your placement agreement because you're not going to school, but I'm not going to school, there are other reasons. And that goes to the training for staff being able to identify what's really going on. It's not just I'm deliberately violating curfew. What's going on? Understanding how to get that extra information so that we can provide the services that we need. But the key here is the families. We have got to figure out how to help them help themselves. They cannot take care of their kids when they're hurting.
And I guess the other thing I wanted to add to that is, for me, what I've seen is that we have to figure out a way to take the stigma out of needing help. Because that's how we're going to get our parents engaged. Until we can figure out that it's okay that I need some help and that doesn't make me a bad mom or incompetent, because a lot of our parents have a lot of the same kinds of traumas, and they tell their daughters, well, I got through it. So we as a community all across the country have to figure out a way to destigmatize all of this for our families. That's the only way we're really going to be able to reach our families. And our returning citizens, they come home, they want to reconnect with their families, but the stigmas are getting in the way, whether that's a addiction stigma, mental health stigma, you're not cute enough stigma, whatever stigma we want to put on it. That to me is what's prohibiting the successes that we know that our women need in order to be self-empowered.
So while we're talking about girls and women, just to kind of drive home, Captain Whedon, could you give us some statistics on the number of women and young girls that are arrested in this area?
Yes. Before we go into that, I just want to let you all know that
Mike. I can barely hear you.
when a female juvenile is charged with a minor infraction, she is eligible for diversion from the juvenile justice system in the ACE diversion program. Under the ACE diversion program, the appropriate circumstances that the government elects not to arrest or prosecute the youth who commit status offenses such as truancy, curfew, or absconder runaway violations. To include nonviolent crimes. Instead, the government offers the youth the opportunities to participate in alternative court experience diversion programs, the ACE program, which provide individually tailored behavioral health and community support services. This program helps to alleviate some of the trauma that these females experience. In order for them to be participants of this diversion program, certain criteria have to be met. And they include the offense cannot be a felony, the offense cannot result in the significant bodily injury of the suspect, of the complainant. Excuse me. In 2015, from January to present, total arrests have been for offenders, youth offenders, is 2,566. Of the total arrests, females arrested in 2015 is 698. Total diverted, that's all juveniles, total diverted is 179. Total females that have been diverted is 85. And now you say, what's the problem? What is the problem? Well, a lot of the offenses are not able to be diverted. So a lot of the offenses, the simple assaults, the threats, ADWs, some of them are so heinous now that we can't divert these females. So that's one of the reasons for the low diversion. Also, sometimes the funds are not there for the diversion programs, which adds to a lot of the trauma for these victims as well, because they're not able to receive the support necessary to get themselves out of the situation in which they found themselves in the first place.
Okay, so far we've talked about a couple of things, areas that we know need to be looked at some more. We talked about the family healing, a systemic kind of way of doing family healing, and we talked about destigmatizing the fact that we need help in many areas, and we talked about inconsistent funding. What are some of the other focuses and challenges that any of you have experienced when working with our women and our girls?
I think for us, it would be, a recommendation would be helpful if part of their reentry plan is that some of those services could be mandated, because oftentimes if once they leave out, if they connect with their man, their pimp, whomever, they will come back. It's a revolving door. And so if something could be mandated within their plan to help them connect with services, that would be helpful.
And that definitely is a challenge. When we look at, particularly for us misdemeanors, when their sentence expires, they're done. They have no one to report to, nor do they have the supports. We've done things such as having a program to meet them at the door to get them to those first appointments. We do things like bringing in so many of the different service providers, DBH and DOH and nonprofits and all, to make sure that there's a connection prior to release as far in advance as we can, to help build trust, to help build that communications, with the hope that that individual, when she leaves, that she will go and continue those services. But again, as you said, that's a challenge when she walks out that door and that guy is there, or you go back home to that same community, or you go back home to that same family where those dynamics are not so good. What do you do? So we see that revolving door, and we see that in our rate of the number of women that return over and over again, particularly in that misdemeanor population. We looked at basically that in FY15, that 734 or 78% of the misdemeanants who were released were convicted of one new offense. And out of that, 16% were convicted of 2 crimes. And out of that, about 6%, 3 crimes or more in that 1 year's time. So there's a lot of work that we need to do, in that area as well, to strengthen those kinds of supports. Legally, we can't because their sentence has ended, but we've got to find ways as a community and as service providers to help them stay reconnected.
For DYRS, one concern, I know it's not all about me, but I have to talk about this. So we have, when a parent says, a 16-year-old, and says she can't come home, right? What do? There's no need for her to be locked in a facility, and she's at YSC sitting because we need to find a place for her to call home. It's 30 days. Now we're at 60 days. Now we're at 90 days. What do? I currently have a young person at YSC who needs to go home. Mom is refusing to take her back, and she's 9 months pregnant. That's our reality on a daily basis. We have nowhere for the girls to go. We want to keep the girls here, closer to home, but if there isn't a home, then what? You're criticized because you've identified a possible home-like environment out of state. So we need more here. What does that look like? I really don't have an answer. We're creative on a daily basis, trying to identify, family members, someone who may be able to help. Who are you connected with in the community that may allow you to come home? But that's a daily concern for us, for the young ladies that we're dealing with. So, it's the reality. What am I going to do? And Mom says she can't come here. Don't drop her off. And they won't open the door. And so what do? We bring her back in shackles.
I think we definitely need to act, because that's a reality for us in court social services too, sometimes, especially when kids have been put in shelter houses and picked up from court even. And we have systems in place to take kids home, and sometimes we have to take them to CFSA. But I think we need a convergence of systems to help us. We have a Department of Behavioral Health, and we need to find more creative ways that we can use that department to help us with our work. We need people to follow up with them, because they're not going to follow. When you get home and people are telling you, you're all right, you did your time, it's over. Your trauma's not over just because you did however much time, whether you're a juvenile or an adult. We need follow-ups in school. It's amazing to me how many kids are missing from everywhere but school. They'll go to school because their friends are there. And in some cases, there's no supports in schools. And in some of our employment programs that we mandate adult women to go to as a part of their reentry process, they don't follow up with them to make sure that they're going to their therapeutic services that they may need. I mean, they help them make sure they have a job, and they make sure they collect the attendance. But sometimes, because this is an area where there's so much trauma and stigma around all of this, I just think we need a lot more follow-up. And again, we need funding we need to put our money where our mouth is as a community too. If we want to help these young women, both the juveniles and the adults, then we need to provide the funding so that the follow-up can be made to happen.
And I think in regard to the services, we're changing. I'm a clinician. I've done talk therapy. Every child does not want to talk to me, and I get that. But they'll be dead on these phones. We have to figure out a way to utilize the technology to help and text, whatever. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not the tech savvy person, but I know if there would be a way to engage them with their phones or with the technology, I think we will get some different results, some positive results. The phones aren't all bad all the time. Facebook is not bad all the time. Snapchat is not bad all the time, but that's their reality. We have to be a lot more creative in what we're doing as far as service provision is concerned. A lot of my girls are begging, dying, asking for dance therapy, art therapy, right. Again, and I think that until we start listening to a girl, some girls should be up here, not me. The girls are telling us what it is that they would be connected to if we would listen. And I think if we would listen comes from if we would ask. I think we have to start asking our girls more what their landscape looks like, feels like, smells like, and what it is they think would help them do better. When my girls tell me dance, I attempt to try to get them connected to dance. When they tell me that they would rather do swimming as opposed to come sit in a therapy session for 30 minutes, then we try to find them a class. And so I think those are the kinds of things that would help our girls in regard to dealing with their trauma in some ways too, as opposed to only it being through a through a core service agency and connected to a therapist, as opposed to doing what they're saying would be the best way to relieve them of some of the stress and some of the trauma that they know about better than I do. In a positive way.
I believe we need more mentoring programs. I think that in my own experience as a law enforcement officer, when I go to domestic violence calls for service and I see young ladies who have children who are mimicking the same type of behavior that the abuser is mimicking, and then you tell the mom, hey, would you like some support? And she turns it down and she says, no, ma'am, I need him because he's the provider here. And then you try to get her some help, and then you have this red tape that she's not even willing to go through to even get the services that we have provide for her or to provide for her. So if we get mentoring programs as well as funding, I think that we might be on the right track to success with some of these females.
I wanted to comment on the piece about healing the whole family. And I heard about a program before in the Midwest that does like life coaching with the female returning citizen and the child and the whole family, and try to help the whole family heal and grow together. And the fact that, you know, it's crazy, mind-boggling to me how everything you're saying about women, girls in the juvenile criminal justice system is exactly like what the women are experiencing in the adult criminal justice system. And that's kind of scary because we're talking about kids, like the police officers going into the classrooms and locking up kids, and they having a criminal record at such a young age, and then growing up and ending up in the adult system and all of the systemic issues that they face prior to that with the trauma and everything. So I just think that with the returning citizens population, and when they come home, it's the same thing with a lot of their families don't want to receive them for whatever reason, because some of them have been in and out under the parole guidelines, repeating the same offense over and over again with drug history and things of that nature. Or there's somebody like me, I served 18 years, I came home and my family didn't offer me a couch. But, thankfully I was connected to places like Our Place and Faith Tabernacle and other community organizations that was helping me while I was in, and I connected with them and they helped me, to get into the RSC, which I think we need to duplicate at some point, if ever we get a genie in a bottle, because when they do their assessments, they individualize those plans, and they connect those clients to the services that they want or that they need. I mean, even the clients have an input. Like for me, I didn't have to do inpatient drug treatment after being incarcerated for 18 years. I was able to do outpatient and then go straight into a transitional house without having to try to find one myself. I think that could be duplicated for our juvenile population and for our female returning citizens who are coming home from the BOP. And I gotta say before I stop talking that, you know, women are still becoming incarcerated every day and still returning from incarceration every day back to the city. There's a young woman who served about 17 years in prison. She's coming home next year. She just made parole, so she'll be releasing, if they give her a year halfway house, in January 2006. Case is almost identical to mine. Her and her sister, me and my friend, we all went to prison. Spent a long, lengthy period in prison, and we were young adults, but not young enough to be juveniles. I was 19, she was 18. And this stuff is happening every day. I'm talking to women every day that are on supervision and going through personal struggles with trying to rebuild their families and trying to do everything the CSO say do. And we're, you know, not able to do much for them. But again, the key is being able to say, come and see me. Look, I get it. I've been there, done that. You know, I can talk to you. We can text, whatever you need to do. But I can reach out, connect you to Catholic Charities Mentoring Services Program, and I can connect you to the supervisor at 25K who may be able to help you with some of those issues. And at the same time, stay connected to me and come see me because I want to meet you. That makes a difference for those women because it's like, finally, somebody understands because they have that shared experience. I could go on and on about this subject, but I just want to say that I'm not quite sure if we could alleviate trauma. I was trying to look up alleviate on my phone, but I have a Cricket and I didn't do a good job. But I know that women are not gonna get over it. They can get through it, they can heal, and they can grow, but I don't think that it's ever gonna go away. If anything, it's probably more trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma, even while they're going through the therapy and the healing to, you know, get better. So I just wanted to say that, and I think I've said enough for tonight, unless you ask a really quick question.
When we talk about trauma, when we talk about some of the kinds of programs that we need, we understand that a lot of things are going on in the various treatment agencies and facilities. But what we've got to really, really grasp to me is that reentry takes place in the community. If you're there, if you're locked up for 90 days, if you're locked up for 10 years, when you come back out, things have changed so much. And I heard you talking about those kinds of things that are healing to do, to swim. We send people back out, they go back into the same community, and we always teach them that you've got to find new friends, new places, and new things, but we don't teach them how. We don't connect them to programs outside of their area, you know, positive things to do, and that's where the community comes in. It's those kinds of little things that we could do, and there's a lot of programs and a lot of good things going out in the community that we're not connecting to. So just kind of talking about some of those, do you know some of the innovative kinds of programs? You're hearing our plea, you're hearing the landscape, and now I'm asking from the audience too, because you're out there and you know what's going on in the community, some of those kinds of things, and maybe some recommendations that you have as well to address some of these very, very important issues for our girls and our women, because we pay now, we pay later.
So I'm Debbie Shore, and I'm the Executive Director of Sasha Bruce Youth Work, and we've been doing work in the city for many, many years, 40 years. And in many ways, I feel like, I really appreciate what everybody has said, and I feel like it goes to why are we not taking the services that we know can work, or we can try new things too, but to an earlier point in time. I feel like I've been a part of conversations all these last few weeks about the difficulty that everyone is seeing with families just being so overwhelmed, and and kids are being pushed out, and we are seeing a lot of homeless young people at age 16, 17, 18, where parents are saying, I'm done, I can't do this. And I guess, it used to be true that perhaps at 14 we didn't have as many young people who were having as much trauma. I'm not sure about that, but I know this. Why aren't we getting to an earlier place? And I guess, I'm just throwing that out there. And also, I really think that we have not, as a city, embraced the idea of prevention. I have seen, in my 40 years, things go exactly in the opposite direction. I feel like 40 years ago, we understood the importance of getting out there and getting into the community and having people in the community who were credible to community members and who would, be there and see how to make those relationships happen. And they're all very individual circumstances and different relationships and different courses of relationships. And for a whole variety of reasons, we now have a lot of programs that are siloed, that are, there's a beginning, middle, and end, and you have to be like this to get into them, and we have to, track them in a certain way. And in some ways, it really doesn't fit with who we are and what people really need. So I feel like this is we should be urging something from this. All of these wonderful people here who have such similar commitments and passions, that we should be doing something to make sure that we don't have kids who are violating valid court orders that started with truancy in lockup.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Nargis Fontaine. I do work with juveniles as well as women, but this was more so a statement towards the women because I actually work in the halfway house with them. And I'm seeing them when they're fresh from Hazleton, fresh from Texas, fresh from Kentucky and everything. And a lot of them just want that normalized life back. So when they come back and you have this 72-hour period where you can't do anything, but your family, if you have family that cares about you, can drop some stuff off, but you don't have any sanitary napkins and you might have had an accident on the bus coming down here and we don't have any clothes that fit you, so now you got to sleep in this till the director comes back on Monday. Like, it's stuff like that that's like just feeling like a woman when you step back out. It's still this long transitional period to where, they even back to doing their hair and stuff like that. So I know that with the juveniles that I worked with, they were okay if they were on their ankle monitors as long as they were with a mentor or somebody they were assigned to, but we don't have mentoring programs for women. Because it's, they might get a mentor from a church member or something like that, but there isn't an actual program that will mentor these women, because a lot of them just want to go for a walk around the block. But we can't do that because it's not in the system. You're not scheduled to go out or, whatever the case may be. And a lot of them is like, I can't go to the store. No, ma'am, your case manager didn't put it in. And the case manager doesn't want to have a close relationship with them because then that's an integrity issue with BOP. So they want to just be strictly business, but they're not getting that nurturing. They're getting nurturing from other returned citizens who might be kind of slipping back down the path on their way back in, so now they have attached themselves to the wrong person. So my personal experience, I feel like I know we want to catch them early, and that's great, but for those who haven't been able to get caught early, we kind of need to start implementing those same type of systems for them and treating them like they're juveniles coming back, because just because you're 50 years old don't mean you still don't need somebody that you can talk to and lean on, and that's what I'm not seeing them getting.
And that's one of the things we talk about very much, so that for women, we are relational. So we need that connection. We need each other. And we need to feel normal when you come home. So, that is a very, very good observation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sadia. I'm the owner of Figure 8 Dance Fitness. My company is designed to empower through the art form of dance for women and children. My experience has been in DC public school system, and just recently for a scenario, I volunteered at Brown. There was an African young lady who may have been 13. We did some dialogue with them about feeling good, looking good, and how that also comes out into the art form. And we asked them to line up. This side go if you're beautiful, this side go if you're average. She was the only one to go to the average. We asked her why. Because I'm black, because I'm African, because I'm not as pretty. And that was dialogue, but when the music came on, and I taught her the steps, and she danced. All that shyness, that accent, everything just completely left. It was engaging. So with the children portion, I have something where we have that dialogue about what is a classy woman? What do we feel about ourselves? And then when they dance it, it's like they're dancing out. I asked them, how does dancing make you feel? Now, this is just me asking. It's a release. When I'm angry, I turn music on and dance, and these are children. So if we had more programs in the arts, especially dance, because it's an internal thing that you can really pull outwardly. So I would hope that everyone consider dance as therapy, because it is therapy. It's just not in let them dance for an hour activity there, babysat, watch. And then I have a program where I work with moms who are leaving those responsibilities at home just to regain themselves. And in the classroom, I'm saying, lift your head up, beautiful. Come on, queen. These types of things that they are missing because it's just the burdens of life. So please don't forget that dance is therapy.
We'll have two more comments. I think we're right down to the wire here. I think we have about like a minute or two left for this particular panel.
Good evening. My name is Tony Whitehead. I don't work with any of these populations, and therefore the question that I may ask, these things may already be done. I'm not sure, but I was really struck by Ms. Woodland's comments about the needs for convergence of systems and also follow-up. And one of the reasons is because I come out to these community meetings as a concerned citizen, and I sort of hear these great recommendations all the time. And I sort of wonder, I don't understand how, when we continue to get recommendations, what happens in turning them into policies and programs? I think her comment was so right on because of the fact we do have a lot of little programs that are underfunded, and we don't have the creation of a system and a coordination, I don't think. And I was struck by that because about 10 years ago, CJCC contracted me to go out and do focus groups with community people. And I was really educated because a number of people cussed me out. And they said, you know, here CJCC is doing the same thing. They are giving money to some professors at the University of Maryland to come out and ask us these same stupid questions that we were asked 20 years ago. And so I go out and I hear recommendations like I heard in those groups, and I continue to hear them, but I don't know how they get turned into policies and programs, and the coordination of these programs for things like referrals, et cetera, you know, following people through.
Okay,
so that's
point
my
well
major.
taken. I don't want to stop you, but you said some very, very important things, that there's a coordination, a need for that coordination. And I think that is an issue about the funding and those kind of things. And we want to be mindful of our time. I really apologize to have to cut it off, but we're going to get one
Mine is
more
really
statement
quick.
and that's it.
John Best, Resource Coordinator with the Public Defender's Office. Me and Mr. Whitehead are thinking pretty much similar in our thoughts. I wanted to ask you about information sharing. I heard Ms. Woodland talk about that, you know, she gets a kid or a young lady, they do a psychoeducational or psychiatric, but we also heard that at 18, that kid is not in her bailiwick anymore, she's now an adult. And oftentimes that kid the next day ends up with Ms. Ware, you know, at CJCC. So how does that person know how to pick up? I mean, we have great workers, and how does that person know how to pick up the efforts that Court Social Services has had, and so, and to keep that person from building up new cases, to get to a point where they have to start the psycho ed all over again, or the work and pick up those things. So is there any information sharing that happens? That
Let's give this panel a round of applause. Picking up on the question that you, John, raised, as well as Mr. Whitehead in terms of coordination, part of the discussion today in the policies is not just to have this dialogue, which is really important. The thread here, and I would be remiss if I didn't note this, a month ago we had a Juvenile Justice Summit, and one of our areas of focus was really on our justice-involved girls. We really wanted to pull from that panel and really make it a discussion that just didn't land there, although there are action items that have emerged from our Juvenile Justice Summit. That really gave rise to the topic that we have today. And so I don't want the comment that you just raised to land flat. We will be talking about next steps, okay? And but we want to be educated from one another, because certainly your experience is something that we want to benefit from. Again, thank you, Ms. Gilmore, and to the panel. That was really, I think, very important, because we have folks who are doing and working on the ground. I'm pleased now to invite to the podium Director Kimberly Bassett, who's the Director of the Office of Women Policy and Initiatives. And so without further ado, Director Bassett.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Director Butler and Khalil. Thank you so much for having us here today. I want to give a shout out to Miss Etheridge Bay. She's my hero. You all don't know that. We've worked a lot together this year, and I'm always so proud of how much she cares about her constituents, and I just wanted to tell you that. So also, I see another director, Charles Thornton, here for the Office of Returning Citizens in the back, and I'd like to give him a shout out. Also, one of my commissioners from the DC Commission on Women, Ms. McDuffie, she's back there, Mrs. McDuffie, so thank you so much too. All right, the shout outs are done. Again, I'm Kim Bassett. I'm with the Mayor's Office on Women's Policy. It is an office that's been around since 1987. Have you heard about it? Well, you've heard about it now, because we are working. We do not want to be an office. We sat down with the mayor 9 months ago, and we decided that this was going to be an active office, an office that actually engages with women and finds solutions, and that's what we're doing. And this has been an awesome 9 months, and I'm very proud and happy to be a part of an administration that has over 50% of all the directors and deputy mayors are women in Mayor Bowser's administration. So women are important to her, women are important to us, and my staff, I have 2 wonderful young ladies that work with us, and we sat down 9 months ago and we said, hey, what are we gonna do? We want to make sure that women in the city have access to housing, that they understand what their health options are, that they're equipped to achieve economic equality, that they live safely without fear, and that we engage women. So we said in our office we were going to engage, educate, empower women of the District of Columbia. We have a commission on women. There are 21 women from all 8 wards, all walks of life, and they're phenomenal. And we meet monthly, and we plan, and we talk about policy. We talk about issues that affect the city. We also have projects. They're working on one that has to do with homelessness, and we're very proud of that project, and you'll see a lot of that. We also have a group called CJCC. We engage women around the city. We have about 300 members, and we're always looking for new members. CDC engages, they come out to all of our events, they volunteer, and what's really interesting about these women is now they're doing projects in their wards. So we have just Thursday, the women of Ward 3, they're doing a program around financial literacy. We have women in Ward 5 that are doing things around HIV and working with the Women's Collective and other organizations in the city to do a documentary to talk about the things that are going on in their ward. So every ward is just doing phenomenal things. We also have this program called Conversations with Women Who Lead. Those are for young professionals. We want them to see women, who are doing things, who are positive, and we want them to learn about their path and how they got there. We're also having a Women's Economic Summit in March. We honor women at our Women of Excellence Award. And today I see some people I want to nominate because the work that you're doing is phenomenal. We also do a lot around health awareness. So this month, we are doing the work. We talked to lots of our shelters in the city, and we found out that they are having a problem with sanitary items for women, and we're doing a collection, and we've collected so many products for women, and we're going to give them sometime in the first week of November. We also did a diaper drive for Mother's Day called Diapers with Dignity, because we found out that women on TANF can't pay for diapers with their money that they get. So we decided to collect diapers. We collected, I think, over 17,000 diapers from the city. So those are some of the things that we're doing. But tonight, I want to talk to you about our partnership with the Mayor's Office on Returning Citizens and our experience in our office. The mayor, during the first 6 months, we did lots of engagement. We did budget engagement forums. We actually knocked on doors in all the really underserved communities around the city just to talk to people to find out what issues they have, what things are important to them, what things we should focus on. And every single director, deputy mayor went on these walks, and it was really, really an educational process for us. I'm in all types of neighborhoods, knocking on doors and talking to women, and we found out there's so many needs of women. I mean, it would be 11 o'clock and women were still in the bed sleeping, their kids were running around. I mean, we witnessed women who were actually doing really positive things in their community, on their block, who are empowering women, and none of us know about these heroes. We found out a lot about fear, about a lot of these programs that we were there with a truck from DOES. We were going to conquer. We were going to make sure everybody could get a job and we found out that a lot of the people that we dealt with didn't want to go into those trucks. And so we decided, my staff, that we were like, our office is going to focus on prevention. We are going to actually do something. So every Wednesday in Ward 8 at the Rise Center, we have this thing called Fresh Start Wednesdays. And there we meet with women from all walks of life. We have women who are returning citizens, women suffering with HIV, single moms. I mean, you should have seen our flyer initially. We had these women, you'll see it over there, in business suits, and they were leaning, and they had big hoop earrings, and they were just fly. And when we went to that meeting, we found out that there are women of all ages in this city that are suffering and who want to bond with women. And the women who were returning citizens were bonding with seniors who want to get back in the workforce. So this is like our most rewarding thing that we're doing right now. And today we did a workshop on how to start a business. What we wanted to say was how to start a side hustle, but it doesn't really fit into the government lingo. But those women were in there with businesses where they have healthcare products. They're like making in their own houses, candle making. We had women who were, trying to like start crocheting companies. I mean, it was really a wonderful day, and to leave there to come here, I want to make sure that you're inspired that there are people out here and that the mayor's office on women and the mayor really cares. We did a program with the Office on Returning Citizens and CJCC. It was called the Mommy and Me program. And I went to Hazleton with a group of women and children who wanted to go see their mothers in these prisons. And I watched these children. In the beginning, there was a lot of anxiety. We were running a little late, and they were so upset. They were like, we have to make sure we see our moms. And they were beautiful. Their faces are beautiful. They're articulate, really smart children. And I watched them as we traveled, and I talked to them, and we laughed. We watched movies on the way, because we made sure that they went to Hazleton in style. And we were running a little late, and I could tell the anxiety, the closer we got to Hazleton. And we were just comforting the kids and saying, we're going to make it. It's going to be fine. And we get there, and I'm like, wow, we're at a prison. This is real. We get out, we go and we get searched, and we find out that they're going to extend the time, and the kids were so excited. And then I watched them interact with their mothers, which was, you know, so emotional. We had to keep from crying. Most of the day, we were crying and we weren't crying. It was a very emotional day for me. It was something I was never exposed to. And I watched those mothers, and I don't know what half those mothers were in prison for, but what I do know is they love their children. You could see it. You could see how they interacted with those children. You could see that these women were probably, most of them I talked to are very smart, but they just made a wrong choice. And to see their children, that was just a wonderful thing. They made it so nice. We had a lovely lunch with the mothers. We did crafts. Oh my God, then it was time to go. And then again, we went back on that bus. It was saying goodbye to their mothers. It was very emotional. It was very quiet. We were, you know, trying to comfort them with cookies. You know, do you want some cookies? And movies, and it was quiet. And I just watched that. And then they started they're resilient, so they started popping back up. And then after that, when we got home, we were like, how are kids going to get home? They're so displaced. Some are staying with aunts, some are staying with uncles, some are staying with grandmas. So then that was a whole nother issue. How are we going to get these kids to their family members? So for me, it just motivated me even more to just focus. And so we're trying to do structured activities. We're trying to reach all women of this city. They also did a customer care training. They came to one of the returning citizens are in a program, and they came to one of our workshops on branding. And boy, it was great. And we talked about, you know, all kinds of things. And we had a stylist come. I mean, it was just a good energy. And so, having said that, I really appreciate all that you all do, and we're available. I would love to sit down and talk with some of you about what our office can continue to do, but I want you to know that the Office on Women's Policy and the mayor, we are working, and we are going to make a difference in this city. And thank you so much, because we are engaging, we're educating, and most of all, we are empowering. So God bless you, and thank you.
Thank you, Director Bassett. And that's exactly why we're pleased that you're here today, because we really do want to have this baton pass in a way that really does make sense for us, to the extent we really have our partnerships with the Office of Women's Policy. It really does serve as, I think, an important framework for the discussions that we're having. We want to make sure that our women, our girls and women, before they touch the justice system, we have a framework that really is holistic and comprehensive. And I think some of the questions and discussions that we've been touching on today will benefit from even more enhanced and further partnerships with your office, okay?